think mongooses are just higher up in the hierarchy.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's killing cobras and stuff, and but he's saying I'm a spirit in the form of this, and that he wants to live with them, and he's here to settle down. It's like he's lived this life. He
left because the weasels drove him out. They mutinied against his tyrannical mongoose empire, and he had to go and find somewhere else and lick his wounds.
Did they call it a tribe of weasels?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that phrase before.
Well, what, you used to like a colony of weasels? Or
I don't
a
know.
township?
I don't know if it's a tribe, but...
A clan.
More like an after-school club, yeah.
But yeah, he lays into Marjorie Irving pretty bad. I mean, that's one of the reasons I couldn't get a voice performer to do this, because he is so bawdy. I mean, he's saying that she was a whore, that her husband had to be sex starved to go at her. I mean, she's an older woman now. I mean, the guys. I mean, Mr. Irving's already retired. It's not like he's got some hot wife or something. It's
it could be one of those things where like he's not used to. I mean, he's not going to find a human attractive anyway, right? He's a freaking mongoose. He's like, I wouldn't have sex with you. Like, yeah, because she's not a mongoose.
Well, I guess he's supposed to be like a human spirit. It
shows
a little confusing.
It's confusing.
Is he like possessed? Is he possessed by like a human spirit?
We don't know.
The thing.
We don't know.
Is he like a cryptid that is just something we haven't heard of? It almost sounds like poltergeist activity, like the house is going through an earthquake. He could be a lot of things.
He sounded like The Exorcist, like your mother fucks.
Your mother cooks socks in hell.
Yeah, your mother sucks cocks in hell, like that. It sounded like he was doing that, kind of.
Yeah, he's the original one, man, because this is long before Platty wrote The Exorcist. But what were we going to say, Jude?
I like that when they said, oh yeah, news spread quickly about these people having a mongoose living inside their walls that talks to them. And some of like their neighbors' advice was, hey, mongoose, they're pretty good pets.
You're doing something wrong. I don't know why this mongoose is so mad at you. Maybe you should be nice to it.
It calls my wife a whore and it lives inside my walls. It's not.
Just be nice to it.
That's not a good pet. That's
yeah. It said it can make a delightful, if mischievous, pet, and that all Jeff needed was a little affection and goodwill. It's like it's hard to get goodwill when he's watching me change and like verbally abusing me every time I do.
He's hiding in the wall.
Whistling in the corner every time.
How do you show him affection if he's in the wall?
You do a little shimmy, you do a little striptease and be like, is that better?
Sit by the wall?
Rub the wall. Yeah.
Hey man, just leave money and candy and be like, please be nice to me. That's what I do to my pets, and it works really good.
Well, let's see what the Irving family does do now, and we will move on. Short of stripping down the paneling and possibly burning Jeff out, the Irvings could only resort to traps laid out outside the house and to putting down of poison. But these devices failed, and the malicious mongoose continued to plague and torment them. By the beginning of 1932, after 2 national newspapers had carried brief reports and a photograph of the mongoose-haunted farmhouse, the Manchester Daily Dispatch sent a reporter over from the mainland. He quizzed the 3 Irvings, minutely examining the panels of the walls, and was favored by an interview with Jeff, making one of his then rare daytime appearances. The animal answered questions, told the same story about his past life and background, and repeated his vow to take over the farm. The mysterious man-weasel has spoken to me today, wrote the reporter. I have heard a voice, which I should never have imagined could issue from a human throat. The people who claim it was the voice of a strange weasel seem sane, honest, and responsible folk, and not likely to indulge in a difficult, long, drawn-out, and unprofitably practical joke to make themselves the talk of the town. However, the journalist's suspicions did center on young Voiré, who he watched through a mirror while listening to Jeff's piercing and uncanny voice. He noticed that she half covered her mouth with her hand and that she appeared to be sucking a piece of string. Even so, there seemed no way in which she could have brought ventriloquism to such an expert pitch. Also, it was unlikely that a youngster, born and raised on a remote farm on a small island in the middle of the Irish Sea, could possibly have learned what the reporter called the language of the sewer and the gutter. For that was Jeff's form of address when speaking to the Irvings. The journalist left, and the mystery remained. By now, however, Jeff was apparently enjoying his notoriety, and he took to making regular daylight appearances. He was first seen by Voiré, who said that he had a grizzled face just like a weasel's and that his paws were quite human, just like our hands. Before long, his snouted face was observed by the two elder Irvings, as Gef winked and cocked his head at them from the wall cracks and roof beams. He would scamper along the ceiling or the floor, shouting defiantly, "Why don't you try and catch me, you clumsy two-legged dolts?" But there was no grabbing hold of him, although on one notable occasion, Gef did allow Mrs. Irving to put a finger through a chink in the wall and scratch his fur. However, she must have scratched too hard, for he suddenly cried out, "You vicious bitch!" and bit her finger hard. So yeah, Gef is not only becoming a little more violent, but I mean, he is becoming famous. They are sending reporters from the mainland to visit them, and the reporters are talking about how honest and kind of salt of the earth people that the Irvings are, which is kind of remarkable.
Yeah, remarkable. When you said daytime appearances a couple times, I was picturing him on The View or something in the morning.
Come on, Ellen.
Yeah. All good.
Well, no, he would have been on that This Morning show with Philip and Holly's
Frank and
grandparents
Holly,
or something.
And
Yeah,
some of the footage is remarkable.
Yes.
Right. Well, I mean, what he sounds like he obviously is enjoying fucking with them, and then he actually let the lady touch his fur, which is weird because you'd think if he was really malevolent, if he really didn't like them, he wouldn't have let her touch his fur. But maybe he was just doing that to so that he could bite her, because that's what my dog does to people when they come in the backyard. He will growl at them and bark, and then he seriously sides up to them and looks at them and kind of is go ahead, pet me, and then if they do, he'll bite them.
It seems kind of weird that till up to this, it just seems like they were just hearing the voice, and now that the reporter's there, now he's kind of popping out. He's running along the ceiling. He's peeking out from the crack. Here is Gef peeking out from a crack.
Man. He's taking all kinds of drugs.
He's sneaky. He's peeking. But they bring up an important thing, which is one of
Here is
the
Sasquatch
theories.
peeking out from behind a bush.
Is that one of the theories is that the daughter, whose name takes a little practice saying, is Voire, which is a name that I guess has gone the way of the ages, because I've never met anyone named Voire before, but it is a pretty cool name.
I guess if I have a daughter, I'll call her Voria.
Waria?
Waria?
It's a me, Voire.
Daughter of Drea.
It's a me, Wario.
Yeah. But one of the theories is that somehow she's 13 years old, first off. And at one point they mentioned that she doesn't, besides her appearance, she actually is 13. So she seems to be a very mature 13-year-old, lonely.
I thought it was she's 9 years old, but she acts 13.
No, she looks like she's in her 30s, but she's 13. But Gef doesn't lay into her. I guess Gef is okay with Voire. But one of the theories is that she is somehow a master ventriloquist, and that they think that just because they've got really hollow walls, for insulation, just double walls, and if you speak into these walls, it kind of echoes throughout the house. And even though he even says, "I saw her covering a mouth and chewing on a piece of string."
13-year-olds do that all the time.
See, I got string in my mouth right now.
Yeah, see, it carries on to adulthood.
Yeah, it's like kids that wear hoodies and they're constantly sucking on the little string that hang down from it.
Exactly what I'm doing right now.
I want to ask you guys something. Have any of you guys ever tried ventriloquism?
Hell no, I'm not a dork.
Dude, have you ever tried ventriloquism?
No way. That was me just trying. Oh, golly. No.
All right. Well,
wow, I could have swore it was Rob talking. How'd you do that?
If we're calling out nerddom, I actually did try a bit of ventriloquism.
I was just kidding, Russ. I was just kidding. I think it's really cool. I
was about 13, and I found a Pee Wee Herman ventriloquist doll.
Oh,
okay.
Cool.
Okay, that's actually kind of funny.
Well, when Pee Wee got in all that trouble and the world hated him, all of merchandise ended up at Big Lots. It was called McFrugal's at the time, and they had for $2. For $2, they had this huge Pee Wee ventriloquist doll, and I bought it. I was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" And it came with a book to teach you ventriloquism. It's hard as shit, and hey, Oh no!
Whoa,
It was
that was
cool
really
dog.
good. That was crazy. I didn't see your
Wow.
mouth at all. Not because it's not because you're in Louisiana and I'm in California.
No, you aren't. But what am I? So, but I never got good at it, and I eventually had to stop practicing because my cousin pulled the string too hard and broke it, and his mouth wouldn't open anymore. So,
And that's the only thing you could practice with. You couldn't practice with a sock puppet or nothing.
yeah. I draw some eyes on my hand and do that little thing like,
Yeah. If you were truly dedicated to the craft, you'd have made it work. No,
Well,
you're fine. You're fine.
I wasn't as bored as Vorey because I had Nintendos and other stuff. So
Exactly. Yeah, you weren't stuck on the Isle of Man in the 1930s, so you have options.
So yeah, and other thing, this creepy music I'm getting kind of bored of, so I'm going to try something different for the next reading, and we will continue with this. Oh, isn't that nice? Remember, it's the 30s here.
Oh.
So, where we left off, you vicious bitch. His teeth, tiny and very sharp, she said afterwards. He drew blood from my finger, and I told him, I don't want to get blood poisoning. He listened to me and said, then go and put some ointment on it, you silly cow. As drawings of Gef began to appear in the newspapers of the early 1930s, so his good opinion of himself grew. He talked more about his homeland and asserted that he had been born in Delhi on June 7th, 1852. That made him 80 years old. And he boasted, I am a very extra clever little mongoose. I am the 8th wonder of the world. As though to prove this, he took to reading the daily paper from a distance over Mr. Irving's shoulder. He learned and sang hymns, had a seemingly limitless stock of saucy songs, and could jabber away in any one or a mixture of more than a dozen languages. Growing fond of the Irvings, and apparently feeling he had tormented them enough for the time being, Gef took to hunting rabbits for them. He also rounded up any of their stray animals or Christmas turkeys. And he was known to make the occasional trip into the town and watering place of Peel, where he was sometimes seen scampering about the ruins of the ancient castle. As the months went by, word of Gef and his unusual habits reached as far away as New York City. Fascination of Dr. Nandor Fodor, a research officer with the International Institute for Physical Research, he decided to cross the Atlantic and spend a few days at Cashin's Gap investigating Gef and the possibility of him being a hoax. However, like the journalists who had arrived before him, he considered Mr. and Mrs. Irving to be two mature, intelligent, serious, and trustworthy people. He stated he just didn't see them fooling so many visitors for so long and for no manifest profit. All they got out of it was a deal of unwanted and unwelcome notoriety. However, he did find that Vorey Irving was a peculiar and unusual teenager and suggested that if there was any mongoose business afoot, then she was most likely to be responsible for it. Nice, Louis. So, yeah, now we're getting journalists from New York City going all the way to the Isle of Man. And again, they're pointing the finger at Vorey, the ventriloquist.
Yeah, that's not fair. Just because she's a younger person, then this must be her. Like, dude, she just likes to chew on string and just mind her own business.
Yeah, I mean, she's 13. Who's normal at 13? That's not a normal kid.
Where's she learning a dozen languages? The language of the gutter.
Yeah, the gutter language. Where did she get that? Huh? She
sounds
nice
like the scam of the century, right?
It does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, maybe it's a thing. It's like you get a lot of trouble for cursing in front of your parents.
Yeah, you get maybe in the Isle of Man, there's just no incentive to behave, and she's just like, well, this is her form of rebellion. But I don't believe it. She seemed very nice. Like the descriptions that I read, she seemed like content to. You're right, though. She would be really, really bored. But I don't think that she could do it. I don't think that she has the capability of learning the gutter language.
Yeah, it's the different languages, the language of the gutter. The fact that other people are hearing this if you're a journalist, maybe if you are a journalist and you're coming all this way, you don't want to. Maybe there's no headline that's going to be like, girl bullshits bunch of local hicks. You know, it's a better headline is Talking Mongoose is real, says me.